it needs to try to compete with Call of Duty, because then Call of Duty will be forced to step it up a little bit.
Well, they already did.
Bravo 6. Going dark.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Going Dark podcast, episode number 9. Chop, you know what that means? We are one episode away from being better than 90% of the world. I don't mean to, listen.
That is a crazy statement, but you know what's funny, like, guys, is kind of like, that is the stat we were referring to, where apparently 97% of podcasts never make it past episode 10, which is a wild statistic. But the fact that we are still here, we're around, we're doing our thing, we got plenty more to go. It just makes me excited. This is really fun for us, and your guys' reception has been equally as passionate, and we really appreciate that. So we're here for episode 9, and things are going to get wild from here on out.
Oh, it's going to get wild. But first, I want to address two things in the beginning of the podcast this time. We're almost at 100 reviews on Spotify, so thank you for that. We're close to 3K subs on YouTube, so thank you for that. And it's time to reveal one of our big announcements, Chopper. We are going to be doing a live podcast at the Boston Breach facility in Boston. You know what the funny thing is? I don't know the date right now. It's in June.
June 22nd?
June. I'm going to look it up as we speak. I'll put a graphic on the screen. The editor will put a graphic on the screen, but we will be doing.
I believe it's June 22nd.
Okay.
Almost positive about that, but the editor will correct us, but it will be sometime late June. I believe the day is the 22nd, if I'm not mistaken.
And so we're super excited for that. We have a banger episode that Chopper thought of for our idea that we're going to do live. We're going to get the crowd involved a little bit. We're going to get you guys at home involved in a little bit. So all I'm going to say is check the community tab in the next day or two when you're watching this podcast, because it's just going to be part of the game we might be playing while we're live. It is June 22nd. June 22nd.
There it is.
You were correct.
Got
so
it nailed down. You know how we do it.
If you're in the area, if you're not in the area and you want to come hang out, there's a lot of stuff going on. We're watching the last Breach match versus Optic. Doug Sensor Martin is doing a 24-hour pull-up world record. You know what I mean? We got everything here. We got a podcast. We got a little bit of everything. So
it's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be vibes, and y'all should definitely come for the live show. You can absolutely, if you're in the Boston area, there's no reason not to. Y'all got to come through.
No excuse.
But you guys can check that out if you're interested in coming to our first ever live show. Very exciting, and I'm very much looking forward to that. I've been thinking about it like the last couple weeks. It's going to be great.
I'm excited. But okay, let's get in today's subject. You probably clicked on this video or clicked on the podcast because you're going, Call of Duty needs to copy GTA. What do we mean by that, Chop? What do we mean by that?
So that is we will come back to that in a roundabout way, because we need to lay the groundwork a little bit of why we're talking about this. So we have been discussing the fact that Call of Duty has been an annual release game for a very, very long time. I don't know, 20 years, if not more. And essentially, last year was supposed to be the first time ever Call of Duty was not going to release a premium title. Now, the whole thing with Modern Warfare 2 is obviously kind of the meme about MW3. This is a $70 DLC. And fair enough, because the original plans were that, MW2 comes out in 2022, and then 2023 was going to be a gap year where there were no, let's say, brand new premium release. They were going to do an expansion for Modern Warfare 2 that was kind of more like, a Warcraft or like a Destiny expansion, where you're still playing the same base game, but they bring an equivalent amount of content that would justify a $70 price tag, essentially. And at some point, Activision, somebody made the decision to be like, well, maybe we should release a Call of Duty this year. Maybe we should release MW3. I don't know if that's because IW didn't want to work on Modern Warfare anymore and just had to dump this to Sledgehammer to get this out the door so we can move on. I don't really know. But the point is, they backtracked on that decision and they decided to continue the annual release. And the curious thing is, what would have happened if they had taken this gap year? Would that change the development timeline for every other studio? Would that been good for the Call of Duty franchise as a whole? There's a lot of interesting things to talk about with the gap year that could have been and how other games do their release cycles. And that's why we kind of brought GTA into that a little bit, because that is the other extreme example. And there are things in the middle, which we'll talk about, but that's kind of the idea of what we're getting at.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great summary. The reason GTA popped into my mind, I know we're talking about the opposite extreme, obviously, with GTA 6 coming out 12 years later. I actually don't know how I feel about this subject. I'm kind of want to discuss this like you're my therapist, because I don't really know. I don't know if I really am down for an every other type of year thing, or do I secretly like that they come out every year and, you know, deep down, or, you know, we're all shouting from the rooftops, no, it needs to be every other, every 3. But would we actually like that? Because part of the fun with Call of Duty is this time we're in right now. We're getting leaks. We're getting dates. We're getting little bits and pieces of what the next game is. What's the following game? And I just love that time. I love the time.
That build-up period.
That build-up period. And I'm like, well, if it was every 2 years in the last game, we would have gotten just a DLC pack. Would it have been as hype? Would it have been as fun? Right now, thinking out loud, I'm thinking no. Like it wouldn't have that same like Call of Duty new title, the marketing behind it, and the commercials you're seeing everywhere. And man, I'll tell you what, you can say Call of Duty sucks, but I'll tell you what you cannot say sucks is their marketing department. They got one of the best marketing departments in the world by far. Every game, no matter what it is, the subject, the era, the anything, I'm like, I'm buying it. I'm in day one. Hook me up. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I stand with the
whole situation.
With the whole situation, yeah.
I wanna push back on that a little bit, because I think I ultimately disagree with it not being quite as exciting. And the reason for that to me is that I'm thinking back. It's a bit of a just a personal example, but I'm thinking back at the end of Black Ops 2, like after the final DLC release for that was when GTA 5 really kicked off, and BO2 and Zombies went away for a pretty long time, because after, I mean, I guess we did have like AW Zombies, but basically we went for a good couple years without Zombies content.
I see where you're going.
And I really think that there was this sense of like, there was this hunger for it that was able to grow more powerful the longer it was away. And this is kind of what I was saying with MW3. Granted, I don't hate Modern Warfare Zombies, and I think it's fine. Honestly, they did a lot better than I was expecting. But at the same time, I was almost thinking it maybe would have been a better move in the long run if, okay, they release Cold War, and that is the final Zombies content we play. MW2 comes out, no Zombies for 2022. 2023, MW2 expansion, no Zombies. 2024, those would be a dark 2 years for zombie fans, but my God, when you see the light in 2024, when Treyarch's like, we're back, and you get those zombie leaks again, and you're like, it's been so long. I do feel like that there is almost this reality of the longer you must wait for something, it's going to suck, but the longer you must wait for something, the more gratifying it will be when it finally returns. And that's how I felt with BO3.
I know we're only a couple minutes into the podcast, but you may have already convinced me, because I'm actually looking, before we were about to film this, a Disney announcement went out that they're going to quality over quantity. And we all know, if you're a Marvel fan, I'm not the biggest Marvel fan, as you can tell. I'm a little bit more of a Star Wars fan, but anybody, regardless of fanboy or not, you could tell Disney kind of messed up with Marvel. They were on top of the world, and then I feel like after Endgame, I don't know if anybody said a positive thing about the Marvel since then, like maybe Spider-Man or whatever, but it was because we were getting so much that, I mean, I was trying to keep up from like a casual side of things. I think I'm like 4 shows behind now. You know, I missed Loki. I missed what was the White Knight guy? What was his name?
I have no. I don't know.
The guy Oscar. Let me know in the comments what his name is. I guess I could look it up in front of me. But all those people, Loki show, and it's just like you just kind of get burnt out because you're just like, I don't want to consume all this. I just want one at a time. You know, the Marvels were like, I feel like it was like one movie at a time, a year, like once a year at that point. And you're like, man, it's that hype up. But now it's like 2 or 3. It was like 2 or 3 movies in a year. It was 2 or 3 shows. It was just like too much. Sure. And I know one a year with movies is different than one a year with a game, but
but I think it's kind of true though, and what you said with I think using Infinity War and Endgame are a really good example, because for me, again, I'm not like diehard Marvel either. I'm really not, but I was I was interested in what was going on, especially leading up to Endgame and stuff, and that was, I think, regardless if you're a big Marvel fan or not, I think generally people would agree that the most exciting time during that was the build up to
hype.
Endgame.
Yeah.
The most exciting moment was the build up to Endgame, and I liked Endgame well enough. I thought it was fine. I was pretty good even. And afterwards, I knew going into Endgame that for me, like, that was it. This felt very much like the end, and I was not on board with, I know what they're going to try to do after this. They're going to try to shove, all these Marvel products down my throat and get me try to manufacture excitement for this other thing they're doing. And I'm just like, dude, for me, it's what we were talking about actually before we started the camera rolling. You can't force yourself to be interested in things. And I think they were trying to manufacture interest in whatever they're doing next. When the sort of like initial organic Avenger stuff came on more naturally, at least for me, and that came on naturally, and so it felt like a natural conclusion after Endgame. I was like, after this, I'm done with Marvel for a while. I would watch the occasional Marvel film after Endgame, but I'm not worrying about how it's connecting to everything else. I'm not. That just wasn't how it is for me. And with Call of Duty, not even just Call of Duty, with video games, it's like, with franchises, it's kind of like Halo, where they only release, criticize 343, whatever, but they only release every couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And when a new Halo is coming out soon, there's a lot of chatter about it. People are talking about it. Call of Duty has a time and place for this annual release cycle, and maybe that is where it belongs. I don't know. I've been thinking about that, and I'm like, yeah, there are games like Halo or like GTA or anything Rockstar essentially that releases like once a decade, and it's going to be a banger, but that's kind of their place.
That's their thing.
Call of Duty, it almost feels like their place is that comfortable annual release.
Well,
I don't know.
Here's the first thing I thought about when you brought up Halo was, okay, great, it's hyped every, they come out, what would you say, every 5 maybe every 5 is what they
5
do?
or so? Yeah.
Here's my problem though. What if it comes out and it's bad? Because
Halo Infinite,
although core game was good, everything surrounding it was bad. So if Call of Duty goes, hey guys, we're going to wait 2 years for a release, and then that release is absolute dog, then
that is a risk.
That is a big risk. Like, I mean, I know GTA won't be bad. There's literally, we can come back to this podcast in a year and find out, but if that game is bad, it will be one of the biggest busts in gaming history because of the wait and the hype and everything surrounding it. So that's the problem with these waiting games. Yeah. Cyberpunk, is another one I can think of where it's like this whole wait, this hype, and then it comes out, and I was excited for that game, and then it was terrible, and I'm like, oh, and it just kind of lets you down. It's like with Call of Duty, if you didn't like AW or you didn't like Black Ops 3 or you didn't like Infinite Warfare, it's like, well, in 9 months, I'm going to know that there's another game coming out.
Sure.
And we got hyped up because World War II was after Infinite Warfare. Obviously, there's been some years where we didn't like a couple in a row, but it's still like, even if you get two, like Vanguard, we got Vanguard and MW2. There were 2 bad ones in a row, but then I'm like, well, we're gonna get another one. So it's like, even then, like you get 3 bad games in a row, and that's 3 years. Whereas like a Halo, it took 5 years, and you only got 1 game, and it was bad. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
That is the risk.
You're like, you can pump out 5 games in 5 years, and if one's good, you're like, well, I'm 1 for 5, rather than being 0 for 1 and then have to make another 5-year delay, you know?
Mm-hmm. And so that is true. And I think okay, I'm going to say this, and I hope I'm wrong, but I don't know what it is. I have the sinking feeling that GTA 6 is not going to be as good, or it's not going to have the same impact as people are wanting it to have. And I think not because it will be a bad game. But the problem is, I feel there's 2 things going on. Number one is the gaming community. I feel like we have had these unmitigated, untampered expectations for what GTA 6 will be. I know it's going to be a great game, but I think the expectations are astronomical. And when you have these astronomical expectations, I think no matter what, you will inevitably be let down in some way.
Yeah.
Even if it's a small way, you'll be inevitably let down in some capacity. Also, from a content creator side of things, a lot of people that I see are kind of looking at GTA as like the pie in the sky. It's going to be the thing that saves them and their channel, and it's like this content utopia. And I know people are going to do really well with GTA 6, but I don't think it's going to be like GTA 5, where I don't. The gaming landscape has changed so much since then. You think about when GTA 5 came out. That came out on the PlayStation 3. The amount of people that could stream and or make content on GTA when it first came out was very little.
Yeah.
But those are the people that were doing really well, you know, like Vanoss and them. Those are the people that were doing great off GTA because there just wasn't as much content being made. The PS4 comes out, people are able to stream and record the game more. Now, literally every single person can stream and record at high quality.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're not going to be able to dump out a quick GTA cheat code video and get 80 million views.
Yeah, again. Right.
You know, it's like
it's going to be more effort having to be made.
For sure. It's going to be way more hyper competitive. Content has changed dramatically since then. The internet is just a different place than when GTA 5 came out. And so I think if people are going in with the mindset of I'm going to do GTA stuff or GTA 5 stuff on 6, it's not going to work. But anyways, point is, I have the sinking feeling that GTA 6 is having too fast of a rise right now, and it's setting itself up for an inevitable hard fall off. I don't know. Again, I hope to be wrong.
I do think you have a point there. I mean, even with Endgame, going back to Marvel with Endgame and Infinity War, I think anybody that you'd ask on the street would say Infinity War blew Endgame out of the water. Because Infinity War created such a high expectation for Endgame to somehow top it was practically impossible. And then it comes out and we're like, solid movie. Like for me, I was like, solid movie. Would watch Infinity War 20 times out of 20 compared to that movie.
100%. Me too. Yeah.
So, but I want to shift over just real quick. There's some news that's coming out. I do want to cover this because it kind of ties in with what we're talking about. I don't know the studios right now. I don't have the tweet in front of me, but obviously we know Xbox or Microsoft owns Call of Duty now. And today, as of recording this, they just shut down a bunch of studios. And another piece of news was Tony Hawk. I miss Tony Hawk games so much, by the way. Side note, I love those games. 4, baby. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 remake was supposedly happening and rejected for more Call of Duty content. So it looks like Microsoft is going all in on Call of Duty. Like all these, you know, the devs teams that they have, they're keeping for Call of Duty. Like they're getting rid of these other ones that are doing other games. And then people that want to try Tony Hawk stuff, they're like, nah, go work on Call of Duty. So I know we're talking about should or not, should Call of Duty do this? Should they not do this? I don't think that it's going to happen at all, by the way. I don't think that they would ever, especially now with them owning it, Microsoft owning it, it kind of feels like Star Wars. You know, when Disney bought Star Wars, they're like, get that out of there. Pump, show, movie. And again, we got to the point where everybody got sick of it. And then they're like, okay, let's dial back. So I was just I was going to go with, it doesn't look very promising if you were thinking one day they might do that. But also, if they're putting more effort into these games and more people are involved, does that make the games better every year? Because like we talked about in the previous podcast, it feels like the way we're headed, the leaks, the alleged stuff is coming out. I mean, it looks like they finally got the pulse on what the community actually wants for once.
Sure. And you'll remember that actually brought up two things I want to take apart. Is you'll remember a few years. I mean, dude, the Microsoft acquisition stuff started back in like 2021.
Yeah.
That's when they first started talking about it. That's insane. And it's just now finally kind of gone through or become a factor. But what I was telling people were excited for MW2 in 2022 because that, they're like Microsoft to be involved, all this stuff. We're not going to see the effects of Microsoft being involved for at least another year, if not more. Probably the first time we will see the effects of Microsoft being involved with Call of Duty will probably be COD 2025 because BO6 has been in development for at least 4 years.
Right.
Allegedly. Apparently that's what's... So this has been going on long before Microsoft was ever involved. So we will only see the full effects of Microsoft owning Call of Duty in at least 2025 and beyond.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they're doubling down on it, we'll see how it goes for them. It is really sad that they're shutting down other studios that were working on. Bro, I think the studio that... What was it? Hi-Fi Rush? They shut down?
There was a bunch today. I saw a bunch of tweets and everybody was like, oh, here it goes, That's
crazy. Yeah, really unfortunate, really upsetting. Like, I mean, part of it is that I still don't think we've seen the worst of it. I think there are more layoffs to come. We're having like a big correction in the gaming industry bubble at the moment.
Yeah.
And I know Microsoft is kind of cleaning house, and I totally get that, but they are doubling down on Call of Duty, it seems. And sort of what we were talking about in the previous episode, I was scared that Treyarch may not have enough hands on deck to develop both BO6 and this BO2 sequel. But if Microsoft is on board, maybe they're going to have more resources and manpower behind the situation. I don't know. But I ultimately agree. There's no way at this point they ever take a gap year. The one and only opportunity it looked like we had was with Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah.
And I would have liked to see them do that just as an experiment.
Just try
see what happened. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you knew you were going to get people were going to buy those. Well, the game was so bad, so they might not have gotten the sales they were looking for. If it was MW3 with a map pack extension or DLC, I think it would have done better. They probably knew the reception was not very good, so I would have not bought that DLC. I can tell you that right now.
I was thinking about that. Yeah.
MW2. I quit it. I first Call of Duty I ever quit. Vanguard. I made it through the Black Ops 4 years, the jetpack era. I was good. I was still fine. MW2 was the game. I've never hated a game more than I hated MW2. I don't know what happened, but it makes me angry thinking about it that they wasted a year. Everything MW3 it's just recovery. It's just been a recovery year. How can we listen to the community and give them exactly what they want so we try to get some of the audience back that we lost? I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, I know just Steam shows that chart went into the grave during MW2.
Yeah,
so, I mean, they had their chance, but because of how bad of a game was, they lost that chance. And now I don't think it'll ever happen because of MW. I think MW2 now is going to make them dig their feet in deeper of just doing yearly releases because if we put a stinker out, we got to make sure we got another one ready to go because that one did not make them the money they thought it was going to. It had the great start because they hit it behind MW2. But
so what? That's the question: is what do you do if I know we kind of know what they're gonna do, or maybe, but if you were Microsoft, if you were calling the shots, what do you do with Call of Duty at this point? Do you try to pull a Disney and double down and release Call of Duty and sort of hyper optimize it for
just that yearly audience turnout? Yeah, I mean,
hey, they're upfront. Hey, we're remaking Black Ops stuff.
Yeah. Well, I
very
think
upfront.
I think if the two games are what they're looking to do in the future with listening to people and listening to the devs what they kind of want to do, man, I'm down for yearly releases. But like I said, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think the every 2 years would happen. But
I don't think so either.
dude, you just look at franchises like Madden and 2K and man, games that I used to love, and I feel like man, the yearly thing for them has just been. I've been talking about that since 2010 when the internet, came out and it became frequent to buy stuff. But I'm like, these Madden games, you could buy a $30 DLC roster pack, and
Sure.
I don't know how that would compare sales wise, but I'll tell you right now, if I had a Madden and from a casual perspective, I would just go, yeah, I'll buy a $30 DLC. Why not? But since it's a new game every year, what I do is I do the EA Play. $4.99, play it for 10 hours, and I go, never touch this game again because it's the exact same game as last year.
I think that's a symptom of like the wider problem we're having right now in gaming, and that's why the bubble is bursting. Is like, in my opinion, I think there are too many games on the market, and what I mean by that is like we have too much stuff to play at any given time that we don't really give ourselves enough time to truly enjoy something.
Yeah.
It's like that's the whole thing with like paying for subscriptions or streaming services. Like, yeah, I can invest, $5 into this thing and play it for 20 minutes and like, all right, whatever, I'll never touch it again. But I only wasted $5 on it. But then you're on to the next thing.
Yeah.
I waste $5 on this other thing. We're not like, this is just a thought I've had. I'm not suggesting this, but I've been thinking about it for a while. And I know Tarkov got into big trouble, and I'm not suggesting do what Escape from Tarkov did, because that was, outright a scam. But I was kind of thinking about, now that we have gotten to this point where we've pulled the line so far where games are trying to be hyper free to play. You have these kind of like non-committal experiences. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but you kind of know what I mean. Like, games are very low barrier to entry now, but they don't demand all of your investment in multiple senses of that word.
Yeah.
You can kind of just pick up and play everything, and for very cheap, because like you don't have to commit to anything. But also at the same time, that means a lot of the games just aren't very good. You have a lot of just cheapo games out there. There's just whatever. But I was thinking about, what if a game were to go to the complete other side of the spectrum, and maybe the game is more expensive than the average game? What if they sold like an $120 base game, but it is like real premium content, guarantees maybe multiple 100 hours of good gameplay, like something that is like a real premium experience versus like the dollar store stuff that is currently on the market. I don't know if that is it's definitely not for everybody, but I wonder how a game would do if they were to lean into that a little bit.
I think you're going to get a lot of people upset with that, but I'm
not suggesting that. I'm just, as a thought experiment. What would that look like?
Dude, the thing I think about when the point you made was like Red Dead Redemption. Like, that game came out the second one, I'm sorry.
Red Dead Redemption
2017, 18 maybe ish.
I think 16. Let me
16. Either way, it doesn't really matter. But I still feel like there's people playing that game today because it feels like a finished product, number one. But
it's
you can replay. Yeah, you can replay the story. You can find things in the game that you never found before. There's people still finding things today that they've never discovered. And the game's been out 7 years. One of the things that I remember seeing on a TikTok one time was like an area of the map where people are building a house, and then like you come back 3 months later, 6 months later, or farther down in the story, and they're halfway building the house. Like the house is halfway built. And I'm like,
it's like a real good game.
That is just like insane to me, where it feels like you're actually a part of this universe, and it's like it's a part. It's what am I saying? It's like evolving with how you're playing the game. There's not a game out there right now that's doing that. I feel like
you're an active participant in it, and it feels like to say it's handcrafted is an understatement. That has always been the appeal of Rockstar games, and like, again, kind of going back to GTA 6 for a second, I don't have any doubt it's going to be a quality game. I just think it will be different to what people are probably imagining in their head in some ways, but not the point. Again, I'm not suggesting it, but as a thought experiment, I'm like, what if a game were just to go to the complete opposite direction of like free to try? It's a fine game. Maybe it's not a super quality. It won't provide you that much replayability. It's not that depthful. But what if a game went like the extreme other direction where you have to pay a lot of money, but it's like a real premium kind of thing? Like, I don't know. It's like the difference again, kind of the buffet thing we were talking about earlier. It's like you can go to the buffet or you can go to the insanely expensive restaurant in downtown New York City and spend $5,000 on a steak. You know, not saying you should do that. Definitely not saying, but it's like, what if a game existed? What would that look like? That kind of went that way. I'm not saying I would go and do that, but
yeah. I mean, at this point now, I guess
Call of Duty never will do that. By the way, like that, Call of Duty would never be a every decade release.
Never.
I think their formula is the annual release, and it works for them. And sure, I would have liked to see a gap year, but I think it's fine. They annually release.
So we were mentioning this before we started, and I guess we're kind of transitioning into it a little bit. Of you were talking about all these free games out there, and a game now that is free and getting a lot of heat is a competitor to Call of Duty that some of you may know called XDefiant. And this is a little bit weird to me. I'm not a big fan of the way the community reacted to this game, because to me, it's everything wrong with the gaming world. The game is free to play, does a lot of things right, and they had a lot of beta tests, a lot of stress tests and all that stuff to make sure it's good. And they've continued to kind of delay it because of issues in the game or how it felt or whatever. And it's now getting ripped to shreds, and it's being like, dead game on release, dead game, took too long. And I'm like, why would you want a game? Why are we so happy for a game to release on time, but it be terrible? Like a Halo. You know, oh, that released on time. They forced it to come out on that set time. And look at the game. There was 400 players playing it, you know, at one point. You know, it's like, XDefiant was a fun game. The betas were fun. I don't think it's going to kill Call of Duty. I don't think that was their plan. I mean, part of it, yes, they were trying to get the COD audience with how they were marketing it, but their goal is to be around. I've talked to one of the developers, Aches, who is like on Level Design or some other stuff, but he's like, yeah, we're not here to kill Call of Duty. We're here to be around in 5-6 years as an alternative. You can play our game. You know, I remember playing Call of Duty back in the day, and you had Halo, you had Medal of Honor, you had Call of Duty, you played Battlefield, you had all these games to play, Battlefront, and it's like, when did we get so you can only play COD? I only want to play COD. All the other games that try to compete with it, they're dead games. I'm like, that's
celebrate the downfall of other games.
Yeah, celebrating the downfall of Medal of Honor. Why would we want to do that? Because guess what? Now, same thing with Battlefield. Look, everybody's so complacent. Same thing with NBA and NBA Live. Dude, everybody wanted NBA Live to die when 2K was on its run. And now 2K is the most hated game out there. Like, well, you wanted this is what you got. NBA Live died. There's no competition. Why do they need to try? So when XDefiant,
I was gonna say with XDefiant, is that I almost feel like in a way it at least needs to try to kill Call of Duty, because you know other FPS games like Battlefield, Halo, they're not coming at Call of Duty directly.
No,
but
they're different.
They're coming at it in a way for like market share, and ultimately it needs to try to compete with Call of Duty, because then Call of Duty will be forced to step it up a little bit.
Well, they already did.
You know?
They already did from Modern Warfare 3. The reason they listened to the community, let's be real, was XDefiant was coming out with everything that people wanted, and your top people were talking about it. Your Nadeshots and your pro players and all these top streamers were playing it. And they're like, this is fun. This is a fun arcade shooter. People are begging for a fun arcade shooter, man. I know this is I feel like I hear this people will say a lot like the genre's dead of arcade shooters. I do not believe that. I think there's a need for something that can bring something different to the table, aka like a Splitgate or something, like where it was an arena shooter and it kind of tried to spice it up a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I think
they need to try to compete with Call of Duty because it will force Call of Duty to
that's what I was saying.
increase their own quality, and I think then that in turn would encourage XDefiant to also step it up. Like everybody wins when they're in competition with each other. That's kind of been the problem is Call of Duty hasn't had much competition as of lately. And I remember talking about this with you earlier. I don't know if we talked about it on a podcast, but I remember I made one of my earliest YouTube videos is like I made a video before BO3 came out, and I was like, the video was called "Why Black Ops 3 Will Be Good and Why Destiny is Bad."
Yeah,
and the whole point I was getting at essentially in that video was that BO3 was coming out next to Battlefront that year, and like they are a direct competitor with EA. They were both incentivized to really bring it to the table this year and bring a great product. And luckily with BO3, I would think retrospectively we can conclude that they did bring a great product that year. And Call of Duty hasn't had that direct competition that is hanging over its head. I mean, the closest we've gotten is Helldivers, and Helldivers is also gotten into some hot water with Sony. And Sony has backpedaled on their bad decision that they've made. So, good for that. But yeah, I just think that we all do better, and it's more healthy when there's more competition, and Call of Duty has gone uncontested for a long time. I don't want Call of Duty to die. I don't want any game to die. I don't celebrate when they die. And me being in favor of another game doing well is not because I want Call of Duty to fail. It's because I also want Call of Duty to be better.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That's the thing too. And it doesn't apply just to gaming. It applies anywhere. Sports, content creation, like anytime you have competition, you if you're a competitive person like I am, you step up to the plate and you do better. You don't just kind of crumble and disappear. So yeah, that's what I was making my point with XDefiant was the reason MW3 I feel like happened and they listened to the community was here comes this game from Ubisoft. It's free to play. It's fun. It's exactly what the core. It felt like kind of like a Black Ops 2, 3 hybrid. And
they see Mark Rubin going on Twitter and being like,
Mark Rubin,
no skill-based matchmaking.
Yep. And it's you got former COD pros kind of helping with maps and spawns, and it's like, whoa, okay, let's step it up. And then randomly here comes MW3 with everything that we wanted. So yeah. That's why I don't want XDefiant to just release and die, because if they can release and have content consistently and it's good and people are playing it on the side, I mean, hey, it's going to keep both franchises, with their eyes. Call of Duty would be
open. Like, we need to emulate that a little bit, or they're clearly doing something right. We need to try to also do whatever they're doing right.
Yep.
It just helps everybody overall. And so, yeah, I don't agree with the preying on XDefiant's downfall. I get they've had their struggles, and I cannot say that I will probably play it more than I play Call of Duty, but I still want it to find its audience and community and do well, because then at the end of the day, we all get a better, healthier ecosystem. And if arena shooters are truly dying, then plotting on XDefiant's downfall is not helping the situation.
Yep. I totally agree. That mindset never makes sense to me. I hate that mindset. Like, I hope this game dies. I'm like, why would you think like that? That's so dumb.
It's this weird it's this like tribal thing where Call of Duty and Battlefield have always had a rivalry, and the community would be vocal if Call of Duty outsells Battlefield or vice versa, whatever. But that was kind of that felt more like the Xbox versus PlayStation console wars competition.
Yes.
Kind of thing. Where
people are waking up to that, I feel like now. A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. But it's a little bit less like I want this thing to die and never be in the industry.
Yeah.
But it's more like our console outsold yours.
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe I have a different perception on it, but I don't get the like, we have no room in the gaming industry for XDefiant. I want this out of here. It's like, well, no, you really don't.
Yeah.
You don't have to play it, but you will get a better product of the things you are playing if this exists.
So where do you see, like, obviously we both think, I'm trying to figure out what kind of question I'm asking here. Like, do you think we would ever see like a branch of COD almost come out every 2 or 3 years? You know what I mean? Like maybe even like Zombies. Like Zombies doesn't come to every COD, but there's a banger one every 3 years or something. You know, I don't know. I'm just kind of talking out loud.
Well, to your point, something interesting to note there. First of all, at this point, unfortunately, no, I don't ever think we're going to get like a true gap year for Call of Duty. I mean, before we got on camera, I told you that they greenlit Sledgehammer for Call of Duty to develop 2027.
Yeah.
Bro,
We're
it's
not
early 2024 now. Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
But
we're not getting a gap year anytime soon.
so far ahead.
Yeah.
They've greenlit Sledgehammer for 2027. Anyways, not getting a gap year, but I think you could have certain aspects of the game release infrequently, and that was the plan for. It was a game after BO1. Like, so recently some information came out about a standalone zombies game.
I've heard that.
Yeah, and it was not exactly what we were imagining it to be, but the point is it would have been a Call of Duty game that had no campaign and no multiplayer.
Yes.
It would have been just a zombies mode. And personally, I think that would have done well. Very much would have resonated with the zombie audience. And I don't know. I think you have room to do something like that where Call of Duty could release annually, but maybe every third year or something, they could do a consolidated pack of all of the zombies experiences in one disc, or, you know, whatever it is.
That's what I'm saying. If they're amping up production with all these, you know, unfortunately with these studios shutting down and like really making it COD centric, which some people were worried that they were going to do the Halo route with Call of Duty. Like they were going to buy it, and then all of a sudden Call of Duty comes out once every 5 years and it's trash.
Mhm.
But it looks like they're going the complete opposite because they are going all in on this. So I hope they find like that second, you know, like I said, with like the Star Wars example, it's like you got the movies, and then that could be like the COD games. And then there's like TV shows. Like what's the COD TV show? Not an actual
Sure.
TV show, but like what's like that
The
side
equivalent
thing
to that.
Yeah, that they could release that's a game, but it's like something else, you know?
Mhm. But then you go back to the whole conundrum is like, is it too much? And also you don't have that effect of waiting longer for something
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
becoming that much more hype. I really think that if MW2 had taken a gap year and man, let's say they would never do it. Hypothetically, nothing released in 2024. In 2025, if they said this will be the big, like, patently, this will be the biggest, most depthful Call of Duty game ever released, it'd be a big risk. But do you think that would turn the tide somehow and be like, Call of Duty is back for the new era? You know, we haven't had a proper Call of Duty game in like 3 years, but but that's where you get to the game needs to be good. You get a Halo Infinite where it's like, we invested all this time.
A lot of pressure on
and
that
it's
one.
A lot of pressure, sure. So it doesn't seem like that's where Microsoft is at with Call of Duty. It would be interesting to see. Like, I would like to see a timeline where that did happen, but I think they're very comfortable with the annual release. Maybe one day, maybe one time we get a gap year. That could be good, but I don't foresee that happening until at least 2027.
Yeah.
So basically never.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But I don't know. Yeah, I see them continually pump out yearly stuff. I don't know. I do agree with you again with the hype thing with GTA. Like, it is really cool to see how much hype is for every single thing that gets released because of the gap in time. You know, we're apparently supposed to get a new teaser trailer, and it's like people are just it's already been like 8 months since that first trailer release too, by the way, which is just wild to think about.
That's crazy.
Um,
People are chomping at the bit for anything. Actually, another aside I want to go on really quick is that I know from talking to developers of different games that I know myself, every single studio is kind of like in stasis right now. They're kind of like in purgatory because they're kind of waiting to see like where the development of AI goes.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I mean, there's no sense in hiring like
A bunch of people.
100 artists if we can do the load of what would be that work with like one artist in AI or two artists or whatever.
Right.
Like I know a bunch of, and that's why, I mean, we're seeing a lot of the layoffs too, because like some of that's becoming irrelevant, but we're seeing a lot of, I think a lot of companies and development studios are in the purgatory of being, well, we're just going to wait and see how this plays out
Yeah,
because
what's
we
the
don't know if we
next-
should move forward. You know, yeah, they're not comfortable with like moving forward in a direction if them hiring a bunch of people is going to become irrelevant or unsustainable, depending on like the direction of AI, which again, that's a whole other podcast episode. Say that for another time.
Yep.
But I know a lot of companies are in like stasis with that, which is like they're kind of just waiting around.
Like you
And
said,
that's
shift in the gaming scene. It feels like a little bit right now. A little bit of
big shift.
big shift. Yeah, we'll just have to kind of to see. I to summarize, I don't really think we're going to be getting that at all. You know, I don't have hope for that, but it's just something to think about, something to dream about. Maybe if it happened one day, you never know. You just
They could do it in many, like in tiny ways. You know, if parts of Call of Duty go away for some time, then it would be more exciting when it comes back. You know,
Just don't do it. Don't do it
zombies-
with game modes. Don't do it with game modes, man. If gun game, give me gun game at launch and don't take it away midway and then put it back and say it's new content. No. You're not
Yeah.
tricking anybody. I'm not talking about that. Let's get that out of the way.
They've taken zombies out of the game multiple times to not bring it back for many years, and those were dark times. I won't lie, but when it comes back, it's like, bro, you see the sun.
Yeah. Yep.
Crazy.
Well, Chop. I mean, that feels like a good way to do it. I mean, in the comments, what would you want to see Call of Duty? I feel like I know what they're gonna say. I feel like you guys are gonna want the gap as well. But
Do you really want the gap?
do you
here?
really want the gap? Think about it, you know, before you comment and think about it, because it's just it is something that even just talking with you, it's kind of made me be like, oh man, a lot of pressure on taking gap years. A lot of pressure.
Yeah. There's a big upside, but there's a lot of risk too.
Yep.
A lot of pressure. And if it's not good, then you kind of feel like, oh, that was wasted. And it's like, well, why did I even care?
Halo Infinite, ladies and gentlemen. But
Halo Infinite, baby.
anyway, if you can, leave a like on the video. We appreciate that. I just looked at our podcast. At the time of recording this, we have 83 reviews on Spotify. So hit that 5-star if you can. That really helps us out. We've already said that on this episode. But Apple, same thing. We also, fun fact, when you typed in Going Dark, there was actually a Netflix show called Going Dark. So there was like a Going Dark Netflix podcast. And we are now in front of that when you search Going Dark because of how many you guys have reviewed it. I just looked at that prior to this. So
That's
just know
crazy.
when you're reviewing and watching, you're actually helping us become that top result. So we really appreciate that. Chop, anything else?
No, I just want to say thank you again for that. We are almost at episode 10, which is crazy. And then, yeah, I mean, our goal for this is we're going to increase the quality of these shows from here on out. Any suggestions of things you would like us to talk about, they can be tangentially related to Call of Duty, kind of like what we talked about today,
Yep.
or directly related, anything y'all want. And of course, we make content on our own personal channels, so you can guys go follow us on YouTube on our respective personal ones, and go follow us on Twitter and stuff like that.
Yep.
To keep up to date with what we're doing, because we got some cool announcements. And yeah, we're going to continue to go forth that way.
Well, everybody, thank you for watching again, and we will see you in the next episode.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bravo 6. Going dark.